This one, you the one for all that.
Yes. He's a Gon
He's got it.
Utsu.
I know. Shalom to all. That's the one.
I go, Morgan,
Yeah.
No, I can't think from Resnick.
That's Resnick. Yeah.
Resnick is like 15, like a 10-minute talk.
Yeah, I was gonna
that's
say that guy
15
needs to
last
fill
time.
in one day.
That is where my Resnick.
Don't talk about Phil.
Before you
Okay,
start,
we're
what's
gonna-
your coffee again? You like Dunkin' Donuts? You want some like Starbucks?
Dunkin' Black is fine.
Dunkin'. No cream or
Little shake. Okay, good morning, Rabosai. We are, today's daf is Mem Aleph. We're gonna go all the way to the last word of Mem Aleph and Beis.
Yes.
We are beginning
And away.
on Mem Amud Beis by the two dots. Amar Rabbi Ami Amar Rav. My dichsiv yata ben Adam asay lecha kli gola. Pasuk in Yechezkel, Yechezkel often referred to as a ben Adam. And you, son of man, make for yourself the tools of galus. What are they? Zuner, v'ka'ara, v'shatiach. They are a candle, a plate or a bowl of some kind, and a shatiach, which all the Meforshim say is some sort of leather mat that is portable and used for seating during a meal. B'choser kol, the beginning of that pasuk, b'choser kol, is a ve'avata esayvecha. This is from the Tochacha. And this refers to, at the time of Galus, you will be lacking everything. So what does that mean? Amar Rabbi Ami Amar Rav, below ner below shulchan. You will not have a source of light, and you will not have a table. Rav Chisda Amar below Isha. Rav Chisda says it means you will not have a wife. Rav Sheshes Amar below Shamash. Rav Sheshes says you will be without an attendant. Rav Nachman Amar below Deya. Rav Nachman says that means that you are without knowledge, and it is on that word that we will spend a few moments here this morning. Tana below Melech, and one Tana says that means you will not have any salt. Uvelo Revav. Revav is some sort of fatty dip or oil or something like that.
You are bringing this in also.
It might have been a teaching of Rabbi Ami Amar Rav. I don't remember. Amar Abaye. Naktinan, Abaye says 5 lines down, we have a tradition that ain ani ela b'deya, that real anius, real poverty is a lack of knowledge. B'ma'arava amri, and in Eretz Yisrael they said the following: Dida be, when this is in you, meaning when you have knowledge, kula be, you have everything in you. Delo da be, when you do not have knowledge, ma be, what do you have? Da kane. Machaser, if you manage to acquire das, what are you lacking? Meaning you're not lacking anything. Da lokani, my kani. But if you don't acquire any knowledge, what in fact have you bought? Amar Rabbi Alexandri, Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Einachola omen mechalyu al chemoch leno akol avanosa. Rabbi Alexandri says in the name of Rabbi Chia bar Abba that a person who is sick does not recover from his illness until HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgives him for his sin. Shne'emar hasoleach l'chol aunaichi. That somebody who is forgiven for all of his avonos, he is healed of all of his illnesses. Rav Hamnuna Amar, aluma. Rav Hamnuna says that somebody who is healed from his illness is restored to the days of his youth. Shene Amar, the pasuk says, Rotfeish bisaromi noar, yashuv limei aluma. That somebody whose flesh is more tender than a youth, he will return to the days of his youth. Kol mishkavo hafachta b'cholyo. So another pasuk having to do with illness is that someone on whose, even the English translation of this is a little bit clumsy, but kol mishkavo hafachta b'cholyo, that all of his laying downs, he gets turned over in his choli, in his illness. What does that mean? Amar Rav Yosef lomar demishkach lemudo, that he forgets his learning.
That happened to Rav Yosef.
And it's about to happen to Rav Yosef Chalash. Rav Yosef got sick. Thank you very much. And all of his learning was uprooted. He lost his learning. Ahadre Abaye Kame, and Abaye restored his learning to him. And that is why in every place we say, and here in the Mesoras Hashatz, he counts 8 places in Shas from Eruvin, Makos, Nida, where this line happens. We say, Amar Rav Yosef lo shemi eli hadash maisa. Rav Yosef would say to Abaye, I never heard this teaching. Amar le Abaye, and Abaye would say back to him, At amrisa nehalan. Not only did you teach it to us, but you taught us from this Mishnah or this Brisa. Ki havagami Rebbe Talas Esrei Ape Hilchasa. When Rebbe would learn 13 different aspects of every halacha, Agamri Rebbe Chia Shiva Minhom. He taught Rebbe Chia, his Talmud, 7 of those facets or aspects of each particular halacha.
Why didn't they teach them all 13?
Was it 13?
I wasn't there. I don't know.
Covered ground.
But the story has a happy ending. Hang with me for 20 seconds. L'sov Chalash Rebbe. Rebbe, of course, got sick. Ahad Rebbe Chia Kameh Hano Shiva Apide Agamre. And Rebbe Chia was able to restore to Rebbe the 7 facets of each halacha that Rebbe had taught him. Shisa Azdu. But 6, because 13 minus 7 is 6, got left to the side. Now, Havahu Katsra, there was a launderer, Rashi says. Katsra was a launderer. Hava Shmiya Leila Rebbe, Kidahava Goris Luhu. And this launderer was able to hear Rebbe when Rebbe was learning through all 13 aspects of each halacha. So Azul Rebbe Chia, the Gomer Yason Kamikatsra. So Rebbe Chia, Rebbe's Talmud, went and he learned the missing 6 from this launderer. The Asava Hadr Yason Kami Rebbe. And Rebbe Chia then went and taught those same 6 missing limudin back to Rebbe. So then in the future, whenever Rebbe would see this particular launderer, Amalei Rebbe would say to him, Ata asisa osi ve'eschia. You made me, and you made chia. Ika de Amre, another version of what Rebbe said. This is what Rebbe said. Ata asisa eschia. You made chia, ve'chia asa osi. And chia made me. Essentially equating the restoration of someone's learning to having created the recipient of that learning. Rabbi Chia bar Abba says that the miracle of an ill person recovering from his or her illness is greater than the nace that happened to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, who were thrown into a fiery furnace. Shel Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, Eish, Shel Hedyot. Their fire was man-made. Ve'akol yecholim lechabosa. And anybody could have put out that fire. Vizu. But the flame of the chole, what's the flame of the chole? Fever. Shel chole, shel shamayim hi. That is a God-granted eish. Umiyachol lechabosa. And who can put it out? Who's the Rofei Cholim? It's not Dr. Asita Menifin, right? V'amar Rabbi Alexandri, another teaching. V'amar Rabbi Alexandri. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Amar Rabbi Shuban Levi. So Rabbi Alexandri in the name of Rabbi Chia bar Abba. And some say possibly Rabbi Shuban Levi came that when a person's time is up, meaning the Shnos Chayav are up, everyone rules over him. What does that mean? So that means that essentially that any other person or item or animal could be the Shaliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to end your life. Shenamar, v'hayakol motzei yahargeni. That anybody who finds me will kill me. Rav Amar min Hadain. Rav agrees with the principle, but says it comes from a different pasuk. Min Hadain Kra comes from this pasuk. L'mishpatecha amdu hayom, that you will stand today on your judgment. Ki hakol avadecha, because everybody is your eved. If you look just quickly in the Rashi, l'mishpatecha amdu hayom kol avadecha, the kemet shenishpat b'yeshiva shamala, that since the judgment is done in the heavenly basin, hakol nasu avadav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu lifarei menu. Everyone becomes the shaliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to extract payment from that individual upon whom the judgment has been rendered. Back in the Gemara, 10 lines up, in the middle. Rabba bar Shila, Amrulei, Shchiv Gabra. So they told Rabba bar Shila that a certain man had passed away. Gavo Ahava, he was very tall. Rachiv Greiduna Zutra, but he rode a very small donkey or a very small mule. Mata Titura, they got to a bridge, and Istavit, the donkey was extremely frightened, possessed, however you want to explain the word. Shadya, and this tiny donkey tossed the very tall man, the kashachiv, and he died. Now, so what was Rabba bar Shila's reaction to this? Kari al nafshei. So Rabba bar Shila said on this poor soul who died after being tossed from the small donkey, Lemishpatecha amdu hayo. You received your due judgment, and even though you were very tall, and the donkey was very small, and you didn't have very far to fall, anyway, that was able to be a shlichus for his demise. A similar case, Shmuel Chazia, Lahahu Drukisa. Shmuel saw a certain frog, and I can only imagine that this is an automatopoeia, frogs croak. Therefore, the word to describe a frog is krukisa. And there was an akrava, yesiva ala kruksa. There was a scorpion that sat on the back of the frog, the avranara, and the scorpion caught a ride on the frog across the river. Tarka gavra, this scorpion that caught the ride on the frog stung somebody, umais, and this person died. Kariale and Shmuel referred to this person who was stung and died, lemishpatecha amdu hayo, that on your judgment you stood today. Amar Shmuel, and under the teaching of Shmuel, 6 lines up. The only chola that you should visit is somebody who was racked with fever, who was completely consumed by fever. So that's a very specific statement. So la'afuke mai. So who is that coming to exclude? La'afuke hadatanya. It is coming to exclude from the following brisa. Rabbi Yosef ben Parta, Amar Mishum Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yosef ben Parta taught in the name of Rabbi Eliezer. You should not visit anybody who has a stomach illness, nor somebody who his eye is hurting, nor somebody with a massive headache. Why? Makes sense that you shouldn't visit somebody who's having intestinal difficulties, because it's a very embarrassing malady. But why shouldn't you visit somebody who's having eye pain or a headache? Mishum de Rabbi Yehuda. You should not visit them because of what Rabbi Yehuda taught. Rabbi Yehuda, Tibura kasha la'ena ula ishta. That speaking is difficult for somebody who has eye pain and a headache. Actually, I'm not sure what versions of the text you have, but the Gra and the Rush remove this word umali because umali means it benefits. So their reading of this Gemara is that speech is difficult both for somebody suffering from eye pain and for somebody suffering from a headache. Amar Rav, Rava, last line, says the following. Hi Ishta, this headache, this means a real headache, a significant headache. Ilav de parvanka de malacha de Musa. If the headache was not a shaliach of the malach amaves, male kerizra ledikle, it would actually be as beneficial to you as a thorn is to a decal, to a palm tree. Chad l'tvasin yomin, where if you were afflicted by a fever once every 30 days, v'chiti raiki legufa. And it is an antidote, and the Mefarshim explained that it removes whatever toxins and poisons are in the body. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, and this would be my view, lohi v'lo tiraika. No, thank you. I'm not interested in the headache. I'm not interested in poisons. Leave me out of it. I don't want any headaches. Amar Rabba bar Yonasan, Amar Rabbi Chiel. Arsan yafa l'chola l'refuasa. Rabba bar Yonasan says the name of Rabbi Chiel that arsan is good for a sick person and contributes to his healing. So my arsan, what is arsan? Two explanations of what this might be. Amar Rabbi Yonasan, chushla desari atikta. This is it's old husked barley, duresh nafi, at the beginning of its sifting process. So a fairly coarse barley grain. Amar Abaye, and Abaye says that in order to make that grain helpful, you need to cook it as long as you have to cook the meat of an ox, meaning you got to really cook it forever. Rav Yosef Amar, Rav Yosef says, no. It's not just shelled barley, it's semide the sari atikta. It's it's flour made of old barley, duresh nafia, still a coarser flour that from the earlier part of its sifting process, but it's not the full grain, it has already been ground. Amar Abaye, similar teaching, Bayin Bishula Kibisr Desora, and it requires cooking just like the meat of an ox. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'kol v'yivarach. Amen. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, 10 lines down. Bordam, and Rashi says that this word might be bordam, it might be bordas with a samech, that is Rashi's first reading. Ein mevakrin, ve'ein mazkirin shemo. You don't visit him, and you don't even mention his name. Bordam, according to the first explanation of Rashi, is the only simple, explicit way to describe it is explosive diarrhea, very, very difficult situation. Another way to describe it is a constant flow of blood, and that is really where the Gemara seems to land. My taima, Rabbi Elazar v'meshu k'mayin hanovea. He's like a running stream. Rabbi Elazar, lama nikra shmo bor dam. Why is this malady called bor dam? Because bor dam, it's an endless pit of blood. It can never be satiated. So the body is really emitting a lot, and it's a very difficult disease. Shukamayan hanovea. It is like a flowing spring. Now the Mishnah said, way back on wherever it was, that if you make a neder that somebody cannot benefit from you, you're still allowed to be marpei or refus nefesh. I'm sorry.
I think that's cholera. That,
I don't know what the disease is. I know what this dysentery. The symptoms are awful.
Okay, we know what it is.
I would focus on the symptoms.
Malaria.
Okay, by the two dots. So the Mishnah said that if I'm moder hana, that somebody else is not allowed to have hana from me, I'm still allowed to save his life, because we said that hana does not include healing, meaning you're allowed to heal somebody. So heichi tani. So what is the Mishnah talking about? If the phraseology is such that refuas nefesh means that you'll heal him for free, but refuas mamon means you'll heal him for a fee, lisni hachi. Then why did the Mishnah be more explicit and say you're allowed to heal him for free, but you're not allowed to heal him for money? Ella, that's not what the Mishnah means. Here's what the Mishnah means. Refuas nefesh gufo. Refuas nefesh means that you're allowed to heal his person, himself, his own malady. Refuas mamon, the hemto. But what you're not allowed to do is to heal his animals. Amar Abzuta Bar Tuvia Amar Rav, however, in the name of Rav they taught, Aval Omer Lasam Ploni Yafila. You are allowed to speak. Oh, this drug is good for the animal. This drug is bad for the animal. The Rashi right before the Mishnah says, because speaking is not really providing any hana. You're just providing guidance for that person to provide hana to the animal. Okay, the Mishnah. If my neder means that you cannot have any hana from me, the noder is allowed to bathe with the madir in a large bathtub of a lo bektana, but not in a small bathtub. And before she explain, because if the water's too cold, the presence of a second human body will warm the water up a little bit. If the water's too hot, the second body will help it cool down a little bit. Either way, in a smaller bathtub, you moderate the temperature of the water, make it more tolerable. And you are allowed, says the Tanakama, to sleep with him in a bed. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, there's a qualification for that. You're allowed to sleep with them in the bed because the second body adds heat. And in the summer, in Eretz Yisrael, in the Middle Eastern countries, it's very, very hot. And therefore, it's uncomfortable. So there's no hana there. But this time of year, when it's wet, when it's cold, the extra body heat is for sure hana. And therefore, you're not allowed to. Because you are giving him benefit. You can recline with him on the bed and eat at the same table with him. But you're not allowed to eat from the same platter. But once everybody around the table has taken from the tamchui, from this platter, then you are allowed to take it. So what does this mean? So the Gemara is going to give us a slightly longer brisa, but essentially what this means is the following. If I withhold taking certain parts of certain foods from the platter because I want to reserve it so that you have more, you are benefiting directly from my action. And therefore, we don't allow you to take from the same tamchui until it's made it all the way around and everybody's had an opportunity to take. There's another explanation offered by the Ran. And the Ran says, because what they used to do was they would, very hotel breakfast style, they would take whatever they wanted for breakfast and they would stash a little bit extra to take back to their rooms to eat later. So if you leave some more over so that they'll have extra for later, it's the same idea of providing hana. Gemara says as follows. Tanya actually brings a brisa. You should not bathe with him in a bathtub. You should not sleep with him in the same bed. Rabbi Meir is much more machmer than our Mishnah and says that no matter the size, you should not bathe with him or sleep with him in the same bed. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Gedola b'yimosa gishamim, v'ktana b'yimosa chama, that you are allowed mutter, that you are allowed to sleep with him in the same bed or in the same, be with him in the same larger bathtub if it's large during the winter, but smaller if it's in the summer. Rochetz imo b'amati gedola, umazia imo b'ktana. You can wash with him in the same bathtub if it's large. Umazia imo b'ktana. But if it's just a schwitz, no problem, even if it is a smaller space. But you're allowed to recline with him on the bed, and you are allowed to eat with him on the table. But you are not allowed to eat with him from the same platter. But similar to what our Mishnah said, you are allowed to share a tamchui with him once it makes the rounds. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina says he's a qualification to this. Only once it makes it all the way around to the host. Because once it makes it around to the host, then we know, because the Balabais always takes first, that everybody has seen it. Okay, final Mishnah, 6 lines down, 6 lines up. Lo yochalimo mina avus. You should not eat from the large trough or platter that they would provide of vegetables to the workers in the field. And you should not work in the same row as him. Rabbi Meir. And those are the words of Rabbi Meir. Chachamim say you can work in the same row as him. You just have to be farther away. Rashi, the other Meforshim, explains that the reason that you can't work close by in the same row in the field is because you're digging and you're working that particular plant benefits the other person by making it easier for him to work where he's working. Bekarov, says the Gemara, lo pligi de aser, that when you're close by in the field, everybody agrees that it's aser, and the Bach fills in the words, because you're actually healing, you're softening the earth nearby. Ki pligi birachok. But where they argue is when you're far away. Rabbi Meir savar gazrin and rachok mishum karam. Rabbi Meir says it's aser to work in the same row, even if you're far away, because we're concerned that when you're close, you might come to work in the same space. Because you are healing, you're softening, you're making it easier to work the ground before you. Rabbanan Savri, Lo Gazrina. The Rabbanan are not concerned. They're not gozer adkan memala.